Chapter 2. Fred Barnett and Buck. The boy traveled north, going where and for what he didn't know. He was homesick, lonely, afraid, and unarmed. Apaches were coming and going, a constant threat. Had Blanco Nino not been who he was, they would have had him. Extreme caution results in slow going, and this tested his patience to a level that he'd never experienced. He had to camp with no fire, and his food and water were running out. On his third day, he heard shots firing. He knew that to investigate was a mistake, but being young and curious, he just couldn't help himself. When he was close, he tied up his horse in a dry wash and crawled up a hill to look down on the excitement. There were 6 horses held by a young buck in a draw behind a very large boulder. The boy now knew how many there were in the raiding party. Further looking found the battle. In a small group of rocks, 2 cowboys were holed up. The surrounding ground was clear and they were able to keep the warriors at bay. Suddenly, one of the cowboys came riding his horse out of the protection and rode as fast as the horse could run. He was heading north with great purpose. This drew all but 2 of the Indians in that direction. One to keep the remaining cowboys in the rocks and the other to hold on to the horses. An opportunity appeared. Blanco Nino, with all his knowledge and experience, was able to approach within feet of the young warrior holding the horses. Having no weapon, he'd be forced into a hand-to-hand fight. His approach had to be silent if he wanted to take the advantage. The young Apache was preoccupied with trying to see the battle. Blanco Nino was trying to control his breathing, sweat dripping from his face. He made a rush to tackle the horse guard. A hand-to-hand battle ensued. Both young men were fighting for their lives. They rolled onto the ground, and both found their feet. The warrior had a knife, and he was slashing back and forth. Blanco Nino had nothing but his speed. The young buck rushed at Blanco Nino. He tripped and rolled onto the ground. Blanco Nino saw his opportunity and pounced upon his opponent. He found a rock and beat the warrior's head a dozen times. Probably 10 times more than he needed to. There were no guns on the horses or the dead Indian, so Blanco Nino was still unarmed. He untied the horses and set them free. They ran off as if they were glad to be rid of their situation. Now he only had one warrior between himself and the lone remaining cowboy. Slowly, crawling through the rocks, he gained a position above the warrior. This buck was armed and shooting at the holed-up cowboy. Blanco Nino's only hope was to crush him with a rock. He knew that if he'd miss, the warrior would pursue and shoot him very easily. Blanco Nino found a rock that weighed 50 pounds. He climbed the boulder, looking down over the warrior. He dropped the rock and it hit the buck right in the head, killing him instantly. Blanco Nino thought about making sure he was dead, but the condition of the body made it pretty unnecessary. He then yelled to the hold-up cowboy, "Senor, can I come in?" "Come on in, but if this is an engine trick, your lights are going out," the cowboy said. Blanco Nino stood and walked to the rocks that protected the cowboy. As he entered, he could see a single man, older than he expected, looking to be 50 or so and in a hell of a lot of pain. The boy said, "Senor, the savage ones will return very soon. We must leave now." "Sorry, son, but I've got an arrow in my leg and I ain't able." "Let me see your wound, senor. I have experience with this and perhaps I can help." The cowboy eyed the young man with a suspicious eye. The boy was white, but dressed and walked like a Mex. The old cowboy said, "I don't know who you are, but you ain't no Apache. Go slow, young fella." Blanco Nino examined the wound. He had seen this many times. An arrow ran through the upper leg just above the knee. It was sticking out both sides. The boy said, "Senor, we must leave from this place and move to higher ground, just over there. The savage ones will return very soon, and we cannot be here when they come back. You will shoot one of them. This will make them only 3. I think this will move them away from us." "Well, boy, just how am I getting over there?" asked the cowboy with great effort. "It is okay, senor. I carry you." "If you can get me there, I'll be surprised. This trip is gonna hurt like hell, but let's do it." Blanco Nino hoisted the cowboy onto his shoulders and staggered off. It was very difficult to carry him to this place, but he kept going. The higher ground was 20 feet up a steep embankment, and they fell many times. Each time the old cowboy groaned in pain, but at least they were there. Blanco Nino set the cowboy down and ran back for the rifle he left behind. He returned in a short time. "Here, senor. I hope you are a good shot." "From here I can shoot their eyes out." No, senor, we must not kill, only wound. If I get a good shot, I'll kill me another stinking Apache, said the old man. Blanco Nino explained, I want to kill them also. However, if we wound only one, the other three must take care of him. This makes it harder for them to come for us. They have no horses and they must walk. It will not be possible for them to come to us. They will move on. We can kill them another day. The cowboy looked very hard at the boy and finally said, Son, you seem to know what you're talking about. We'll do it your way. As they waited, Blanco Nino began to doctor the arrow wound. He found a flat cactus and skinned both sides. Then he rubbed it down the arrow, protruding from the man's leg. He broke off the stone arrowhead and said, Senor, this will hurt very bad. Please suffer in silence. We do not want the Apache to hear. Cowboy nodded his head. Blanco Nino pulled the arrow out. Cowboy groaned in severe pain and then passed out. The boy put the skin cactus on both sides of the wound and tied him around the leg with his torn-off sleeve. The cowboy came to and saw the bandage. Why the cactus, boy? The flat cactus stops the bleeding and infection, Blanco replied. I hope they don't come back for a while. I need some time to get myself together, said the cowboy. As the time dragged by, the old cowboy started feeling better and started asking questions. How do you know how many there are, boy? Blanco Nino answered, I counted their horses before they left. If there's only 4 left, what happened to the others? Asked the cowboy. The boy answered, I killed them, senor. With your bare hands? Asked the cowboy. No, senor, with big rocks. At that, the old cowboy had a look of astonishment on his face. Blanco Nino put his hand on his lips with a signal to be very quiet. He peered over the rocks and saw that the warriors had returned and were creeping to where they thought the cowboy was hiding. They were in plain sight from that position. The boy motioned for the cowboy to come over and take aim. With great effort, he crawled to a position where he could rest his rifle. He cocked the long musket, took a deep breath, and fired. The closest Apache fell, grabbed his leg, and rolled behind a boulder. The other 3 warriors scrambled for cover, knowing that they'd been outsmarted. The boy stood up and yelled in the Apache language, My name is Blanco Nino. I have killed many of your people. I have killed 2 of your raiding party just today and set your horses free. Leave now, or I will kill you all. Without hesitation, they gathered the wounded man and disappeared. Blanco Nino sat next to the old cowboy and inspected his bandages. The old cowboy sat and stared at the boy. Finally, he said, I don't know what you said to them, but it must have been powerful, because they just up and left. Their numbers are not large, and to fight would cost them more than they are willing to pay. What's your name? Asked the cowboy. The boy answered, I am called Blanco Nino. That ain't no name, boy. It is all I have, senor. They waited for help from the ranch to arrive. Several hours went by. Blanco Nino related the events that brought him north. He talked about his adopted family and village. He talked about the horrible things that the Apache had done to his people, how he learned to battle with the Apache threat, how he hated the Apache and wanted to kill them all. The old cowboy listened with great interest. They were developing a friendship and mutual respect. About the time the boy's story came to a close, they heard horses coming in fast. The old cowboy looked out and said, Thank God! Buck made it back to the ranch alive and brought help. He waved and hollered at the group, bringing them to his position. There was much celebrating when they found the old cowboy alive. Boys, I want you to meet a new member of our clan, said the old cowboy. This is Buck Bailey, No Name Smith, Bobby Blue, Tucson Slim, and Philo Sundin. Buck was a hand, about the same age as Blanco Nino. He stepped forward to shake the boy's hand. Buck asked, What's your name? Before the boy could answer, the old cowboy said, This man ain't got a fitting name, but since he saved my hide today, his name's Barnett, just like mine. That's good for a last name, Fred, but what about a first name? Buck asked. The group thought for a few seconds. No Name Smith said, I never saw a better doctoring job than what he did for you, Fred. Let's call him Doc. Doc Barnett. Blanco was being taken in by this clan. He was lonely, afraid, and very glad to have people help him survive in this hard world. He thought about his new name. He decided it was a small price to pay for their friendship.